Bride's family DSRESPCTS Groom's black grandmother discover the incredible heartwarming twist. The sun glimmered down on the picturesque suburb, bathing Sarah's dream wedding in a golden glow. Excitement buzzed through the air, but undercurrents of tension surged just beneath the surface. Sarah, a spirited 28-year-old, was wrapped up in floral arrangements and cake flavors while her beloved fiancé, Jake, a kind-hearted mechanic, lovingly installed the final touches to their wedding car. Everything seemed perfect until whispers and side glances from her affluent family began to stir unease in her heart, raised by his resilient grandmother, Miss Edna, who had faced the unrelenting tide of adversity. Jake embodied pure heart and work ethic. The warmth of his family values was as palpable as the rustling leaves outside. Yet today, as Sarah's family scoured the guest list for any sign of imperfection, they focused on the one detail that would shatter the moment: Miss Edna's invitation. Sarah's mother, grappling with her own biases, begrudgingly extended the invitation to the proud black matriarch, who had poured her life into raising Jake. The day of the wedding dawned bright, with Miss Edna slipping into her best dress, a deep royal blue that danced with every step she took. Pride lit her face, but the warmth of her excitement was undercut by shadows of doubt. As the ceremony began, guests marveled at the lavish decor, gold accents and lavish floral arrangements, a stark contrast to Miss Edna's humble background. Icy exchanges flicked through the air like daggers as Sarah's family made snide remarks, their whispered disdain swirling around the room. Sarah's heart raced, entwined in love for Jake while grappling with the painful realization of her family's prejudice. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As tension coiled tightly around the room, the local veterans community, inspired by Miss Edna's lifelong service, had organized a surprise tribute to honor her at the exact moment Jake would deliver his toast. Just as the air felt thick with unspoken animosity, Jake stood, a light flickering in his gaze, ready to address the crowd. There are many things we can inherit in this life: money, connections, privilege, but what truly matters is character, he began, his voice steady and resolute. Miss Edna raised me with the values of love, perseverance, and dignity. Just when the atmosphere began to shift towards a fragile reconciliation, Sarah's family squirmed, grappling with the reality of their biases laid bare. Gazes broke away, and whispers faded as unrecognized voices crept in, leaving the room simmering with unresolved tensions. A profound silence fell over the gathering. Would Sarah's family confront their prejudices? Could they embrace a celebration that honored all backgrounds? Would they close the door on love that bridged two worlds, or come together in solidarity and understanding? As hope flickered like a candle in the dark, the question hung heavy: had the damage already been done? The moment lingered thick with tension, as every eye seemed to hold its breath. Jake's words hung in the air, providing a fragile bridge between past hurts and the possibility of acceptance. Sarah's heart raced. For a split second, the chatter of guests faded away, her world narrowing to the couple at the center of it all: Jake, with his open heart, and Miss Edna, with all the strength she had bestowed. Then, one of Sarah's uncles shifted in his seat. A broad man with silver-streaked hair and a hardened demeanor, he opened his mouth, his brows furrowed tight. The crowd shifted, anticipation mingling with dread. "What do you mean character?" he barked, breaking the silence that had settled like a thick fog. "You think we should just forget where we come from?" The words cut through the gathering, provoking gasps and barely suppressed murmurs. It felt like a punch to Sarah's gut. She had expected some clumsy comments, but not an outright challenge. Her gaze flickered toward Jake, whose expression hardened slightly, but his resolve didn't falter. "Uncle Frank," Sarah intervened, stepping forward, her voice gaining strength. This isn't about forgetting our pasts. It's about embracing love. You of all people should know that. The heat in the room escalated. Jake took a deep breath, chalking up courage, and raised his glass but lowered it again, letting the moment settle. Miss Edna is more than my grandmother. She is a symbol of resilience and love. When I look at her, I see strength. I see sacrifice. And all I ask is for you to see that too. Eyes flickered among the guests. Uncertainty faltered like a shadow crossing through sunlight. Sarah's mother sat with her hands clasped tightly, visibly playing out a conflict behind her cool facade. Unbeknownst to Sarah, her mother was wrestling with everything she had ever learned about race and privilege, and with her own unyielding beliefs. Just then, an unexpected voice broke through the silence. The florist, who had been arranging the flower displays, stepped forward. I grew up where you're from, Mr. Frank. I've seen what it's like to feel less than because of where you were born. People are told they don't belong more often than they should be. Her voice was surprisingly calm yet packed with emotion. But we go on to create families, friendships. Love is what holds us together. It transcends backgrounds. The atmosphere shifted again, tension uncoiling as people began nodding. Laughter from a previously hidden table, where Miss Edna's friends from the veteran community sat, broke through the brewing storm. Slowly, several of them rose to their feet in solidarity, warm smiles spreading across their faces. They began clapping, a rhythm that echoed and slowly cascaded through the room. Miss Edna's eyes filled with tears as she experienced warmth radiating not just from Jake, but from a community that had come together. For the first time that day, a feeling of hope blossomed among the fabric of the moment. Yet, before anyone could rejoice fully, Sarah's uncle's voice cut through again, softer this time but still sharp. What you're asking for is no small thing. Do we really move forward with everything just left behind? Jake, unyielding yet vulnerable, replied, No, we carry our past, but we choose how it shapes us. It's about love, sharing it, building on it. Let us not walk away from this moment. All the faces in the room turned toward Sarah, their expressions a blend of skepticism and curiosity. Could the next steps lead to genuine transformation? Would they come together under a shared understanding, or would the walls of prejudice and bias reassemble, stronger than before? As Sarah took a deep breath, she could feel the crossroads ahead. Choices awaited. Could love conquer all, or was it simply another fleeting hope? The room buzzed with a mix of hope and uncertainty, as if the air itself crackled with the weight of expectations. Sarah stood at the center of it all, feelings swirling like the vibrant blooms that filled the hall. She could see how her uncle, with his rugged demeanor softened ever so slightly by the florist's words, still seemed anchored in his own beliefs. Everyone is entitled to their feelings, Sarah began, her voice steadier now, almost soothing. But feelings have power. They can unite us or divide us. She locked eyes with Jake, who nodded encouragingly. Today, we are choosing to come together. A tense silence followed, hanging like a thin curtain, charged with uncertainty. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, each thump urging her to hold on to the moment. She had envisioned today as a celebration filled with laughter, love, and acceptance. The thought of it slipping away terrified her. Do you not see the power of us standing here? Jake interjected, his voice stronger, more commanding. Not just as families, but as a community that can unite. I understand this is uncomfortable, Uncle Frank, but that discomfort is the beginning of change. Frank's frown deepened, but another voice chimed in, an Aunt Sarah hardly noticed before. We've all lost something, haven't we? We've lost chances to understand each other, to really see one another. Maybe it's time we start. She glanced at Jake. You're brave for coming here, for wanting to openly share love. That deserves respect. A murmur rippled through the crowd, awakening thoughts and feelings buried deep. For a fleeting moment, the shadows of doubt seemed to lift as arms crossed and whispers filled the corners of the room. Miss Edna, whose presence brought gravity to the situation, wiped away her tears and looked around at her friends and family. "You know, darling, it has taken me a lifetime to realize that love can envelope our scars," she said softly. The warmth in her voice cut through the air like sunlight slicing through clouds. "If we can stretch our heartstrings, we can weave a new story together." Sarah felt the emotional weight in the room shift. People who had once been adversaries found common ground in the struggle for acceptance. They began to lean toward one another, physically and emotionally. Even Uncle Frank's stiff demeanor seemed to waver under the gentle push of empathy. The applause from Miss Edna's friends swelled, and laughter broke out among them, shimmering like bright clinks of glasses. The atmosphere crackled anew, and Sarah felt a beam of hope unfurl within her, igniting a sense of possibility she had begun to think was lost. As the last notes of laughter faded, Sarah boldly stepped closer to her uncle. "What if we let love be the reality that shapes our memories? This gathering, today, can be the start of something beautiful. Together." Her eyes glimmered with urgency, hoping he would see the truth that felt magnetic in that moment. Frank hesitated. The furrow of his brow relaxed. I can't promise you I'll agree completely. But I'll listen." Jake, speaking directly to Frank, shared a small smile. "That's all we're asking for. Just listen. Not just for me or Miss Edna, but for what love can bring to all of us." A collective gasp echoed as hope hung in the air, fragile yet vibrant. But as the silence settled in, Sarah's heart raced with dawning realization this wasn't over, not yet. Jake's courage laid a path, but would everyone truly be willing to walk it? Could they meet at the intersection of past and future? As the challenge still loomed large, Sarah felt the question lingering: what would it take for them all to step forward together into a world shaped by love, not fear? The atmosphere hung thick with anticipation, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Sarah caught her own reflection in the glimmer of the crystal chandelier above, a mix of hope and fear staring back at her. She could feel the weight of her uncle's decision settling over the crowd, the way a heavy fog blankets a coastline. "Maybe listening is the first step," she said, her voice rising slightly above the murmurs. She searched the faces gathered around, looking for affirmation. "Just think about all the stories we've been holding back, the love we've been too afraid to share." Uncle Frank scratched his beard, a gesture she had come to associate with deep thought. "All right then," he finally said, his voice low but steady. "Let us hear it. Show me what you've got." Jake stepped forward. He had an easy confidence, something that always seemed to draw people in. "Thank you, Uncle Frank," he said. "The stories we share connect us. They can bridge the gap between the past and what comes next." He turned to Sarah, his eyes shining with intensity. "Why don't you tell them about your grandmother?" The room fell silent again, but this time it felt more like a shared breath rather than hesitation. Sarah's heart raced at the invitation. She had shared stories of her grandmother before, tales of love and resilience woven through her childhood like a comforting blanket. "My grandmother," she began, glancing at the old photos displayed along the walls, "faced so much in her life. She came from a time when love was often shunned. Yet, she never turned her back on it. Every Sunday, she would gather the family for dinner, no matter how tough the past week had been." Jake took a step closer, nodding in encouragement. "And she was never afraid to put her heart on the line, was she?" "No," Sarah continued, the memories flooding her. "Even when people turned against her for loving my grandfather. She believed love had the power to heal." A distant look washed over Uncle Frank's face, as if the memories of his own past were being unearthed. "I didn't know that," he murmured, almost to himself. "Most people don't," Sarah replied softly, feeling the moment shift. "But love is like that. It remains, hidden sometimes, but always there, waiting to be acknowledged." Laughter interspersed with silenced tears began to weave through the crowd. The combination made Sarah dizzy, her heart swelling with hope. Eyebrows lifted and faces softened as someone else among them shared a story, a connected fate, a family member lost to distance or fear but found again in tenderness. As the stories flowed, something miraculous began to unfold. Voices rose, one blending into another like fine notes in a melody. It felt like a tapestry, one of colors and textures, each adding its unique note. The blend diffused an energy that was tangible, warming the air above the table littered with hopes and memories. Sarah's gaze darted to Miss Edna, who was smiling through joyful tears, her energy fanning the flames of courage in others. It felt as if generations were standing behind them, all searching for the same thing, understanding, but in the midst of this breakthrough, Sarah's excitement was met with a flicker of doubt. There were still many stories to be told, many hearts still hesitant to open. Would this tide of emotion be enough for those who stood on the periphery, still anchored by their past wounds? Her heart pounded at the thought. It suddenly hit her what would happen next. After all, while love had brought them together, could it truly help to bridge the divide that had formed? As she scanned the room, looking for anyone who might still be harboring skepticism, she couldn't shake the feeling that today held the key to a greater understanding. And then the quiet question pressed at the back of her mind: what else needed to be shared before they could step fully into the light of acceptance? The warmth in the room grew with each shared story, yet uncertainty still lingered. Sarah felt it in her bones, a quiet tension swirling beneath the surface. As voices rose and fell, she took a breath and stepped back from her spot at the table, feeling dwarfed by the shared histories flying around her. She looked at the faces of her family members, each marked by different emotions: hope, doubt, and even resentment masked behind forced smiles. What they needed was a catalyst, a way to ignite the stories that remained untold. "Can we talk about those who aren't here?" Sarah's heart raced as she spoke. Her voice wasn't much louder than a whisper, but somehow, it carried through the crowded room. All eyes turned towards her, apprehension lifting as interest peaked. "People like my grandmother, who wasn't just a storyteller, she was a barrier breaker. They lived against the odds, making choices that resonated through the generations." She gestured towards her photo, now bathed in soft light. "Sometimes it's the absence that holds the greatest weight in our hearts." "Exactly," Jake chimed in, leaning against the table. "What about those unspoken truths? People who have given us life lessons but weren't recognized for it?" There was a collective nod, as if Jake was stirring a forgotten pulse that now beat louder in their midst. Uncle Frank shifted in his chair, memories flickering across his face. "Your grandmother had resilience," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We all need to recognize those spirits among us. Perhaps it's time to share our losses along with our joys." The room quieted, absorbing Frank's words. They felt weightier now, as if the air had charged with electricity. One by one, stories began erupting among them. A cousin spoke of her fears of losing the essence of their family traditions when her parents divorced. An uncle voiced regret for not reconciling with his estranged sibling before it was too late. Each tale began to weave a rich patchwork, creating connections that were previously invisible. It was healing. It was necessary. As Sarah listened, she felt an urgency swell within her. She turned to Miss Edna, who had remained a pillar of support through it all. "What about you? You've seen so much change over the years. What can we learn from that?" With tear-filled eyes, Miss Edna shared, "I've witnessed love that knows no bounds and family that can fracture into pieces. It's the stories we pass down that keep the fabric of our families intact." Her voice trembled as she continued, "When we open our hearts, we allow future generations to feel the warmth of our shared love. We need to embrace all aspects of our past, not just the shiny parts." The room emanated a profound stillness, each person digesting her words. It was revealing, and at the same time, a gentle push towards vulnerability. Sarah could see it now. She wasn't merely recounting tales. She was starting a shift, kindling a movement of understanding that could transform their perspectives towards one another. Suddenly, someone cleared their throat at the back of the room, drawing everyone's attention. It was Aunt May, her brow furrowed in contemplation. "I want to share something too." Sarah's heart raced again, anticipation mingling with trepidation. What significant truth was about to unfold from the shadowy corners of their shared family legacy? Would this tale bring them closer together, or risk pulling them further apart? As Aunt May took a shaky breath, Sarah realized that their journey was only just beginning. What other revelations lingered, ready to emerge? Aunt May adjusted her glasses, the light glinting off the frames as her gaze shifted to the photo of Sarah's grandmother. "You might not know this, but your grandmother faced her share of battles too, battles we often chose to overlook." Her voice was shaky, yet it held a fierce determination. There was a stillness in the room, even the tick of the clock seemed to pause as everyone leaned in. Aunt May took a deep breath. "There was a time when you all were just children. A time we thought we could shield you from the harsh realities of the world. But the truth is, there were family secrets whispered behind closed doors, and hidden pain that still echoes today." Sarah's pulse quickened. Hidden pain? What had Aunt May been hiding all these years? The thought rattled through her mind like a drumbeat. "I remember it vividly," Aunt May continued, her voice steadier now. "It was around Christmas. We were all gathering, excitement filling the air. But there was an undercurrent of tension because of an unexpected guest." "What do you mean?" Jake interjected, his brow furrowing as memories danced behind his eyes. "Who was it?" "The man your grandmother wanted to bring, a dear friend from her past." "He was black," Aunt May revealed. Gasps rippled through the family like a sudden gust of wind. It was the late 50s. Our family was more concerned about reputation than love. Eyes widened, disbelief overtaking their expressions. Sarah felt her heart constrict. How could they have forgotten that part of their family's history? "Your grandmother stood her ground," Aunt May said, a hint of pride in her tone. "She believed love should transcend all boundaries. Her courage should have united us, but instead, it became a fracture. The hostility and shame we felt pushed her away. It was wrong." Uncle Frank shifted, visibly pained. "I remember that night. I was so caught up in what others might think that I didn't tee back her. I let fear win." His voice cracked, and Sarah could see the guilt reflected in his eyes. "What happened to him?" someone asked. Aunt May lowered her gaze. "He left that night. Your grandmother was devastated, but she never stopped talking about him, about the love that could have been. She used to say, 'Love is like a river, it finds its own way even through the toughest terrain.'" Silence enveloped the room. Each member of the family was lost in thought, the implications of Aunt May's revelation electric in the air. It wasn't just a story, it was a call to face their past and reconcile the fractures. "Why haven't we talked about this before?" Sarah finally breathed, the weight of the question heavy with realization. Aunt May looked up, eyes glimmering with tears. "Because we were afraid. Afraid that acknowledging our past would break the family even further. But holding on to that fear only keeps the pain alive. We need to heal, together." Everyone sat in contemplative silence, processing the impacted web of their family's history. A sense of urgency filled the air. They felt the need to act, to honor not just the memories of their ancestors but to recognize their own journey towards understanding. "Are we ready to talk about those whose stories are yet to be told?" Sarah asked, her voice firm with newfound resolve. As she glanced around, she could see tiny sparks of conviction igniting within her family members. The room to breathe felt different now, almost as if it exhaled the same fresh air that hope brings after a thunderstorm. What other stories lay hidden in their hearts, waiting for someone to embrace them? Who among them would gather the courage next to unlock another chapter of truth in their family narrative? The tension hung in the air, thick and potent, as Aunt May wiped at a lone tear that had escaped her eye. Each family member seemed to carry invisible weight, the kind that comes from years of unspoken truths. Jake shifted in his seat, glancing at Sarah. They both knew this conversation was far from over. "Let us not stop here," Jake said, his voice breaking the fragile silence that had settled. We need to dig deeper. Learn what we didn't know. We can't just sit with this. I agree, Sarah replied, determination sharpening her words. It's not enough to listen to a story and move on. We have to honor Grandma's love, her fight. We owe it to her. Uncle Frank nodded slowly. What do you propose? We can't change the past, but we can change how we move forward. I think we start by talking about everything. Sarah's pulse quickened as ideas rushed through her, a whirlwind of possibility. Let us share our own stories of exclusion or misunderstanding. What did we feel? Let those memories come up. They matter too. Aunt May looked around, her heart swelling at the thought of a family transforming before her. It's not just about rediscovering the past. It's about healing those bonds. You've all made me proud tonight. Then let us begin, Jake said. I'll start. He leaned forward, a light flickering in his eyes that faded too quickly. I remember when Rena first came to our school, he said, recalling the girl who was often an outsider like them. I joined her at lunch because she was sitting alone. But I remember looking around at my friends, feeling that pressure to just sit back and ignore her. There was this part of me that wanted to shield her, but another part that scared me more. He clenched his jaw, regretting his hesitation all those years ago. Jake, you were just a kid, Aunt May said softly. You didn't know how to navigate everything yet. Does that make it any easier? He looked around, seeking understanding. I think about all the people I left behind because of my fear and what that meant for them. I can't help wondering if I'd spoken up, maybe things would be changed for her. I know what you mean, Sarah interjected, her voice steady. In high school, I felt the same, like a coward. I stayed quiet when others made fun of a student just because he wore thrifted clothes. I laugh at it now, but it hurt him. I wish I'd had the courage to take a stand. The room filled with whispers of agreement. Each family member began to share snippets from their past: a cousin whose family dismissed a close friend because she was Latina, the hurt of a sibling who felt sidelined for their artistic dreams. Stories poured out like a river flowing, unearthing pain previously buried. Aunt May's heart swelled with pride as the family reached an understanding. They recognized the importance of empathy in bridging their past with who they were becoming, but then, the weight shifted once more. What did Grandma's lover think when she stood up against her family? Sarah wondered, her brow furrowing with curiosity. Did he know she fought for him? A glance among the family revealed how much this question stirred something deeper. They could only imagine the heartaches leading up to those buried emotions. The flickering lights overhead buzzed softly, mirroring the stirrings of thoughts that still hung in the air, waiting for clarity. Would they find the courage to seek out the voice of Sarah's grandmother's love story, one that had been shadowed for too long? As the night wore on, the family felt both vulnerable and empowered. They could push deeper into the untold stories, but would they uncover the heart-wrenching truths that lay at the end? The crack in their facade had begun to widen. What would they find if they dared to turn the next page? Jake swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the room settle on his chest. He could sense the emotional journey ahead, where memories collided with feelings they had long buried. He watched as Sarah took a breath, her eyes sparkling with the weight of their shared stories. Okay, then let us keep going. For Grandma, Sarah said softly. What else do we know? What about her lover? What did he give up to love her? There was a moment of hesitation before Uncle Frank sighed heavily, nodding in agreement. You're right. He was caught in a world that didn't accept him. But my mother, she had guts. You should have seen her. She stood firm against everything just to be with him. They were inexplicable together. Aunt May laughed gently, shaking her head. Sometimes love does that, doesn't it? It pushes us out of our comfort zones, makes us face our fears head-on. Maybe that's what we need to do, Jake suggested, leaning in, a fire igniting in him. We need to face our own fears, our own discomforts. Share them. Because if Grandma faced hers for love, why can't we? A profound silence spread through the room. Each person considered it, weighing their past moment by moment. Then, Sarah spoke up, her brow furrowed. How do we find Grandma's love story? How do we learn about him? Aunt May looked thoughtful. There are old letters. If I remember correctly, they might still be in the attic. They are dusty, but they're filled with memories. We might just discover what love truly cost her. Let us do it. Jake exclaimed. Let us dig through the attic. Tonight. There was a spark of excitement mixed with apprehension. Uncle Frank stood up, stretching as if the thought rejuvenated him. All right then. I'm in. It's about time we unearth some truths. As they made their way to the attic, Jake felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The air carried the scent of old books and worn-down memories. Dust motes danced in slivers of light sneaking through the cracks in the wood. Uncle Frank pushed open the attic door, and it groaned like an old friend awakening from slumber. I haven't been up here in ages. Hope we don't end up buried under junk, he joked, but his eyes glimmered with nostalgia. Jake stepped inside, the soft crunch of floorboards underfoot echoing in the stillness. He felt a connection, an unbroken thread leading to his grandmother's spirit. All right, where do we start? He asked, surveying the room. Over there, Sarah pointed towards a stacked box, sagging with the weight of past lives. That's where I remember seeing some of her things. They pulled at the box's edges, grappling to pry it open. Dust exploded outward, like time itself rushing at them. Inside, they found not just letters but photographs, some stained with age, black and white images of Grandma laughing with someone in the sunlight. As they pulled out the photos, a strange warmth enveloped Jake. Look at her smile, he exclaimed, captivated by her joy and freedom. It was a side of her he had barely known. Beneath the photos lay a small leather-bound book, creased and worn. Everyone's breath caught. What is this? Aunt May whispered, cradling it like a treasure before slowly opening it. The pages were filled with her delicate handwriting, stories of love, struggle, and resilience. They felt the weight of history swirling around them, binding them to Grandma's experience. Her heart, when they read the first few lines, a hush fell over the attic. Every word was a piece of her, each story enriched by her laughter and her pain. Suddenly, Sarah gasped, her eyes wide. Wait. Listen to this. The moment felt electric, charged with discovery. What revelations awaited them in these silent pages? What would they learn about the love that had dared to challenge everything? As the family leaned closer, hearts racing, the whispers of the past echoed louder, urging them to uncover the truth together. Would the love story they unearthed bring them closer to the memories they sought, or confront them with heartbreak they hadn't anticipated? The room vibrated with the power of what lay ahead, and they all felt it, the pull of Grandma's voice, waiting to be heard. Listen to this, Sarah began, her voice barely above a whisper as she traced her finger along the delicate letters. Everyone practically leaned into the book as if the very air surrounding them buzzed with anticipation. The summer of 1945, she read, a soft crackling in her voice. I met him by the willow tree at the park. The air was thick with the scent of blooming lilacs, and I felt his eyes pull me in like a tide. She paused, her breath catching as the lines began to unfold, a tale filled with longing and courage. Jake watched his sister, her brow furrowed in concentration, as they all surrendered to the story. This wasn't just their grandmother's passage into love, it was a door into their own vulnerabilities. He felt a stirring in his heart, a flicker of something he hadn't addressed for too long. Here, it's about the first time they kissed, Aunt May said excitedly, her voice trembling. Oh, how brave she was. Jake continued to listen, the words immersing him in a world where love was worth the fight. As Sarah recited the letter, he could see in his mind's eye the girl Grandma once was, with a carefree laugh and eyes full of dreams. But then, there it was, uncertainty shadowing her joy. They wrote letters to each other, but it wasn't easy, Sarah continued, reading a segment where Grandma detailed nights spent waiting, longing, battling the fears of rejection from a world unwelcoming of their love. I remember my heart racing every time I heard the knock at the door. The silence that followed was alive, like a held breath in a room. Uncle Frank rubbed the back of his neck, and Aunt May's mouth was turned down slightly, thoughtful and pensive. What must she have sacrificed? Jake wondered aloud, his mind racing. What did she give up for this love? What if love isn't just a happy ending, but also the darkest night? The atmosphere crackled with emotion, each family member pulling forth their own shadows of regret or fear. Could they face their pasts, just as Grandma had? The world was against them, and yet Aunt May pointed out, her eyes glowing. She still found her strength. If she could fight then shouldn't we fight now for the love we feel? Jake felt a rush of warmth. There was something empowering in her words. Struggling against family expectations, standing strong against society, that was a fight as old as time. They weren't just rediscovering Grandma's story, they were starting to confront their own. Keep reading, please. He urged, his heart pounding as Sarah turned the page. As she continued, the letters unveiled tales of stolen moments, laughter amid the storms, and a love that bore the weight of 1,000 unwritten stories. But then the letters took a darker turn, describing a society that sought to tear them apart. Jake felt the room grow tense, as the reality of racial and social barriers fell like a heavy curtain. The world outside their attic felt miles away, distant from the warmth surrounding them. Wait, Sarah paused suddenly. This is where it gets different. Her voice wavered, and everyone held their breath again. What was it? Was there more to Grandma's story? Had she faced even greater trials? What did she have to confront next? Uncle Frank whispered, leaning in closer, and the grip of anticipation tightened around them. As the revelation loomed, the air crackled with a need for understanding. What profound truths lay hidden within those penned curves? What twists of fate awaited? With every word, they began to understand this journey wasn't just about reliving Grandma's love but possibly redefining their own. Each letter brimming with hope and despair intertwined, connecting them all in ways they never thought possible. Jake leaned in, what if this was only the beginning of a greater revelation? Interest sparked in his eyes, there was no moving back now. What truths are waiting for us in these pages? He asked, eager yet uncertain, his heart racing. The family felt that tug of destiny again, the pull to dive deeper into the letters. The promise of discovering not just their grandmother's past, but their own futures lingering just beyond the next line. As the evening wore on and the last hints of daylight faded outside, the attic became a sanctuary, a warm enclave filled with shared breaths and intimate revelations. They sat huddled in a loose circle, the old book of Grandma's letters resting in the center like a cosmic hub, connecting them all through its aching love story. Sarah carefully turned the page, her heart racing with every stroke of the pen that revealed glimpses of Grandma's passion and struggles in a world that didn't understand her. The world outside was heavy, a storm that never seemed to pass. But love? Sarah began to read aloud, pausing at the weight of the words that felt incredibly relevant. Love was always unfurling, like spring after a long winter. I knew he would change my life. Her voice mirrored Grandma's strength, steady and resolute. They sank deeper into her narrative, feeling her joys and heartaches as if they were their own. With each revelation, the dusty air crackled, anticipating moments of courage or sorrow. Each word was kaleidoscopic, revealing the vibrant colors of Grandma's life, interspersed with darker hues of loss, fear, and social rejection. Even in times of despair, Aunt May interjected, wiping tears from her eyes, she found ways to keep hope alive. The room nodded in unison, they could see it, Grandma's spirit reflected in the faint glow of the attic light. Jake leaned forward, his heart full. Every challenge she faced was wrapped in love. If we can honor that, it means we have to confront our challenges too. His voice carried conviction as they all grasped the same realization. The courage to face the past lit the way for their future. "Let us read more," someone urged, and the family felt an eagerness to dig deeper. What else lay hidden in those pages? As they continued, Sarah read about moments when Grandma and her lover were nearly torn apart, candid conversations about unfulfilled dreams and aspirations unchained by the love they shared. It felt personal, an echo of their own longing for acceptance. They could see the struggle playing out behind the words, Grandma navigating the weight of family expectations and societal norms, and yet defiantly loving a man who had only wanted to love her back without fear or hesitation. "I discarded fear for passion, for love that made me laugh, that made me cry," Sarah recited, her eyes shimmering with emotion. She believed that breaking barriers was worth the heartache. The power of her words wrapped around Jake and Sarah like a warm embrace, filling them with resolve. Uncle Frank shifted, his brow furrowing as he mumbled, "How could I have ever forgotten her fight? It's a disgrace to think our family would forget how brave she was. Yet here we are, facing our own battles together just as she did." Aunt May replied, her voice resolute and strong. "Let her story be our rallying cry. Love cannot be stifled." As they sat shoulder to shoulder, the remnants of doubt dissipated. They were becoming a community, woven together as they honored their grandmother's legacy. A collective understanding bloomed. They were all descendants of resilience, shaped by the struggles of those before them. "Look," Jake said softly, pointing to a passage that described Grandma's dreams of a life filled with warmth and acceptance. She wanted a family to embrace diversity, to celebrate love in all its forms. A murmured agreement swayed around the room, their eyes brightening with newfound hope. "Maybe this starts a tradition," Sarah proposed, her tone soaked in conviction. "Gathering together each year, sharing stories, and embracing every facet of who we are." "Yes!" Aunt May exclaimed. "Let us carry her legacy forward. Love has a way of transcending generations, but first, we need to keep the dialogue alive." Their spirits ignited, and Jake looked around at family faces, previously clouded with skepticism, now glimmering with understanding. "We're standing on sacred ground here. Our stories matter, let us own them." As they continued to explore the letters, the last chapters of Grandma's love story illuminated the profound connections that thrive among them, underscoring one undeniable truth: love was worth every struggle. Each sentiment echoed the ambition to forgive, love fiercely, and push past biases just as she once had. With tears streaming down their cheeks, they each pledged to honor not just the lives of their ancestors, but their own commitments to love and cherish the relationships they had forged. They would strive to lift each other up, to recognize individual struggles while celebrating the bonds that had been remade that night. As they eased away from the attic, Jake closed the book, cradling it to his heart. "Grandma taught us something powerful tonight," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "and it's our turn to teach those who come after us." Together, they stepped into the future, hearts lighter, spirits connected, and a commitment to keep the stories alive, breathing life into their family's legacy as they marched forward against fear. They were stronger than yesterday, they would be ready for tomorrow. As they embraced one another, sharing tender whispers filled with hope, Jake knew they were finally unraveling the love story of their shared lives, one of acceptance, understanding, and a bright horizon filled with endless possibilities. Don't wait another moment. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. You need to show your support for these incredible narratives. Comment your reactions and feelings about this heartwarming ending. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative journey. You're part of this community, and your voice matters. Let's keep sharing love and understanding.